I have a background that has been very thrilling and fun and exciting, flying all these different aircraft, firing missiles off of F-35s, testing aircraft. This is the blue patch that we actually earn after 1 year of training to become developmental test pilots, experimental test pilots. So it's out at Edwards Air Force Base. There's one at Pax River for the Navy. We go through this because we learn to be the first ones to fly any type of aircraft. So the actual aircraft and then the weapon systems themselves. So if there's a new missile that needs to get tested, they come to us first. We want to make sure that it's safe for other people to be able to fly. It gives us really cool opportunities and maybe some risk involved as well. But it's been thrilling having this part of my career. AC-130 gunship over there, that's a shell from the fire that you just saw that came out. Yep. There is me flying a helicopter through the Nevada ranges, a lot of fun, and then me flying a jet suit. One of the first American jet suit pilots, I chair the advisory board for Gravity Industries, as we're trying to bring cool technology to the warfighter and to society in general. And I also had some cool opportunities. It's going to be high risk. Autobot ship's going to drop the Ospreys. They'll virtually glide to the LZ. It's going to be high risk.
They want to do what?
Yeah, that's right. What we want to do is the Transformers are going to drop the Ospreys from the Autobot ship. So that was me on the big screen. I just so happened to hang out with Michael Bay for a day as they shot this scene where they're doing something. I've never watched the movie. Don't tell him that, I guess. But I've seen this part. It's pretty cool. Opportunities as well as this part. I'm going to go back. I'm going to show you again. That roof. That roof was not supposed to come off that building. They never planned for that. Amazing, right? So before they shot this, before they wrote this, I sat down with Jerry Bruckheimer and Joe Kaczynski, and we talked about what Mav has been up to since his days of shooting down MiGs in the 1980s. And he was a test pilot. If you watch that movie, he actually has this patch, not sideways, but he has this patch on a wall because he went through test pilot school, right? So sitting down with these people is remarkable. And I also have an amazing opportunity. This is not fake, not CGI. This is an XQ-58 high-performance drone. And when the first time in the history of aviation an AI agent took control of a high-performance drone, I was on its wing. This is not that picture, but I was on its wing about 50 feet, wanting to make sure that it was going to be okay. We're good. But this is the type of technology that I've been able to interface with and interact with. And with all my experience with national security and aviation, there's one thing that I want to start this talk off with, and it is about technology. So technology is advancing, of course, yet technology, I think we recognize, is really amoral, right? It is going to reflect the virtues, the incentives, and the power structures of those who are developing and deploying it. So in the hands of America, it's going to look different than China, look very different than non-state actors. And I do think it scales our strengths, but it also scales our weaknesses. I think we can recognize that. And there are weaknesses that we have. So in America, a weakness would be like maybe market excess, where you're going to have prudence being trumped by profit. You're going to have speed trumping wisdom. You're going to have private sector possibly filling the gap where there is a lack of governance, right? And now in China, you're also going to worry about weaknesses, where we have basically a concern of state control. You're going to have surveillance and censorship and conformity that may trump truth and may trump individual freedoms. And this matters because human agency is ultimately the ability to perceive clearly, to judge wisely, and to act intentionally. In our AI-saturated world, which we are living in right now as it unfolds, that agency will be bombarded. I think we are recognizing that. It will be bombarded with algorithmic manipulation. This is why we must care about who we're becoming. And who are we becoming? Here's a great story. This individual was running home from school in 1928. She was catching the train. Her name was Betty Robinson. So she runs and she makes this train. But she didn't know there was a track coach on that train and stopped her in the hallway the next day and was like, Betty, I saw you run for that train yesterday and you are really fast. Have you ever thought about competing? She's like, no, I've never thought about competing. She's like, all right, let's come downstairs at the end of the day. I'm going to clock you. She clocked in an amazing time. He's like, all right, you really are gifted here. Let's go to a race that's happening this weekend. She's like, okay, I'll go to a race this weekend. And at that race, she ties a woman's 100-meter dash record. Coach is like, all right, well, we need to get you to the Olympic trials that are happening in 3 months. So she goes over to New York. She's in the Olympic trials, and she places second in the 100-meter dash. This is her third race that she's ever done. This is 4 months after she was discovered running late for this train. She gets on a boat right away to go across the Atlantic Ocean. 1928 Amsterdam Olympics. Well, it was the first Olympics they let women compete in almost all events, including all track and field events. And the first event up was a 100-meter dash, and Betty Robinson wins the gold medal. First woman to ever win a gold medal in track. There are some ladies missing because there's 2 double faults that happened in that race. She comes home a champion. She continues to train for the 1932 Los Angeles Olympics. She goes up in a plane with her cousin in 1931, a year before the Olympics, and that plane nosedives to the ground. They pick her dead body up from that accident. They put her in the trunk of a car, the bed of a truck, and they drive her to the morgue. The mortician's like, she's not dead. Take her to the hospital. She goes to the hospital. She's in a coma for 3 months. They had to put all these pins in her legs. They had to shorten her leg. And it took 3 months of her being in a coma. When she wakes up, the doctor's like, Betty, I'm sorry to say you're never going to run again. You'll probably never walk again. She's like, oh, really? So she starts an excruciating, difficult process of learning to stand up, learning to take that first step, learning to run again over years of pain. But she can't get down in a starter's crouch when she realizes she still has some speed with her because of the pins in her knees. But what she can do is accept a baton. So she tries out for and makes the 4x100 women's relay for the 1936 Berlin Olympics. She's passing off the baton right there. The Germans are in the lead, and they just dropped their baton. Betty Robinson goes back after being told she will never run again to win a gold medal in the 1936 Olympics. It's a remarkable story. Who are we becoming? I think we can look around and appreciate these amazing accomplishments that people have. And they're great. But is that really the end of their story? Is that the end of her story or our story, wherever we are? No. Right? We're becoming something at almost all times. And as we're becoming, I think we need to think through what makes something trustworthy. This is me flying around some clouds. I love how this aerodynamic effects are going on at the wing right there. So what makes something trustworthy? So I think trust ultimately is not holding a belief that something or someone will never fail you, like we are all going to fail at times, right? I think it's basically a willingness to accept vulnerability based on confidence in someone or something's character, competence, and consistency, right? That is how we think about trust. And in an AI-saturated world, trust includes the ability to engage reality. It includes that ability to engage reality without having our emotions artificially hijacked by manufactured content. Have you guys been experiencing this? We all do. How many people have looked at a reel on Instagram and you're like, oh, my heart breaks for whatever's going on. And you're like, wait, this isn't real. Or you get frustrated like, oh, this is just there's anger that people are spewing at each other. And you're like, oh, the robot made this. Emotionally hijacked. And it shifts from what was a simple belief in something, trying to develop that trust, to discerning at every single moment what is truth. And technology can help us, but it also can be difficult because it can cause those same barriers. And I think ultimately the erosion of trust is not just a threat to truth, it is a threat to human formation, who we are becoming. Because if our perceptions are manipulated often enough, I think they will ultimately, slowly, become people who are less free, less discerning, less capable of wise judgment. So we need to consider who we are becoming. I don't know who that guy was becoming, but he looks pretty dorky. We need to first and foremost be present. We need to be present in this moment. We're here together. How often are we not present in that moment? Pilots usually fly low in fighter aircraft at 500 feet, no lower, to be able to insert ourselves or get away from an enemy. As test pilots, we are cleared down to 100 feet because we needed to test systems that would be able to go past 500 feet and go lower and lower. So we would fly around at over 600 miles an hour at 100 feet through mountainous terrain. Talk about being present. You have a split second that you'll die if your lift vector, we call our lift vector, like where the aircraft is going, if you aren't paying attention and it goes a little bit like 1 degree below the horizon, you'll die within just a couple seconds. So being present, it's something that I've had to live, like my life depended on. And I think we all need to recognize that our society depends on us being present at this moment. Here's some cool videos of flying low. None of these are me, so they're not that cool. Let's be present. Because the future demands us to be present for right now. Boston Dynamics, their Atlas robot, it's amazing. Look at this thing. This is not defying gravity, it's slowed down. How cool is that? How cool is this? It's not AI generated. I think these are fantastic. Have you guys seen these light shows? Amazing. Look at that field of drones. That's a little more concerning. There's a few things that should be concerning as you watch these videos. One, this technology taken to an extreme or taken in the wrong hands or expressed in a way that doesn't embody our values can be dangerous, of course. Two, this isn't real. I just made that with an AI-generated thing. But our minds sometimes don't know what truth is, right? And now you take the technology in such a fashion and you marry it with the difficulty we have in perception in general, and what are we left with? Is A or B darker? They're the same. They are the same color. They don't look the same, do they? How are we adopting technology? How are we thinking about this convergence of data and algorithms and compute with our screens, with our eyes? Augmented reality, it's becoming a thing. This is cool. This is Red 6 from years ago. It's advanced even more. That's not a real tanker out there, but there is a real pilot thinking there's a real tanker out there. A wonderful application. And you can dogfight with it too. Dogfighting an F-22 you can do it from a beta. You think, you're dogfighting, but you're not. Wonderful application. There are good with the bad, and we need to understand our responsibility as we adopt this technology. It's never been more important. This is also a real video, unlike that other dog one. This is from China years ago. You guys see what this is yet? It's a real video, but is it maybe misinformation? Like, are they really employing these? No. Or do we do the same type of thing? I'd imagine I don't know. I can't say. Drone warfare. This is taken years ago too. Wall Street Journal did a great article regarding this technology. Hundreds of dollars. And we see it playing out. Who are we becoming? I think we need to also think about, 20 years apart. Look at this. F-15C, F-15EX, the new F-15. I just randomly took a picture that was similar and figured it out later. This is an F-15C from the 1970s and 80s, air-to-air fighter, single seat. So we were just going to fight other bad aircraft, basically. And you're talking about, I don't know, like $50 million, $40 million, something like that. This is the F-15EX. This is a new F-15. So they replaced all the inner parts of this and made it all digital. And this is literally, we just have a handful of them right now. So we were testing them. I was in charge down in Florida, but we were testing them. The F-35s that I showed earlier were $500 million aircraft. Now, they're not that expensive, but the ones we had were, because they're a test aircraft. I think it's important for us to talk about balance, because I've talked about who we're becoming. This is extremely important. All right, we have our social, physical, mental, and spiritual pillars. I think of it like air refueling. We have to be in a position when we air refuel that is, we're worried about back, forward, up, down, side to side. And if we find ourselves in a position where we're like off on one of those dimensions, it's easy to quickly get back. But if we find ourselves off and then back here, and then to get back is actually much more demanding. I'm going to show the next video. I want you to pay attention to the tail of the aircraft that you're going to see right around here. It's an F-35 refueling off a Hornet. It's like cool, and you can look at it later, but first off, look at the tail of this aircraft. What's he doing? Or she? He's fighting to stay in position. When we have our balance, it is never equilibrium. It is always a fight to stay in position. So it's constantly trying to correct every minor thing that we see kind of out of balance to get ourselves back there so we don't find ourselves in a situation where it is much more difficult and dangerous. This is just cool air refueling video. You're welcome. This is how we usually air refuel in the Air Force. We don't have this probe and drogue, but as F-35 test pilot, I was the commander of F-35 development. So I flew the A, the B, and the C variant. So that's the regular CTOL one. There's the VTOL, vertical takeoff and landing, the B, and then there's the one that takes off and traps onto aircraft carriers. Right. So I got to fly all three, which was cool, and I got to learn how to air refuel this way, which was a different dynamic, challenging. Okay, so there's air refueling balance, and sometimes, we're going to, as test pilots specifically, we're going to put the aircraft out of control. So this is an aircraft that's really high. I'm not going to say the altitude, but it's basically going to start spinning. It's out of control, and we're making sure that the aircraft recovers effectively afterwards. There's a spin chute on this aircraft, meaning if it gets too low and we haven't recovered, we'll pop the chute, and it'll save us. The chute just lets us go vertical. We get lift, we drop the chute, and then we fly away. We also do something called the tail slide. We fly straight up, and then we let the aircraft fall. And it should just go nose down, and it should fly away. But we're intentionally doing this, putting it out of control to make sure that we can regain control. It's a test. Sometimes the test doesn't go exactly as planned. This is a tail slide that did not do what it just showed. That is the world flying around. Not me flying. I would have legitimately paid money to be on this flight, but I did not have the opportunity. Sometimes we're doing something and we get knocked off and things happen that we don't expect. How do we move on when things don't happen as they expect? Well, resiliency. This is a heads-up display of this aircraft. These aircraft are maneuvering in relation to each other, dogfighting. They're practicing, they're training. This is the once again, heads-up display of that aircraft on the left. They're maneuvering towards each other. You're going to see the aircraft on the right march down this heads-up display right above my hand at the top of the screen. When they merge, when they pass each other right now, fight's on. So they're trying to, in training, get to a position of advantage so they can pretend like they're deploying a weapon on the other aircraft. The aircraft on your left again, so it's circled back, it's on the left, is still this. It's going uphill, and now its nose is coming back downhill. You guys know what you just witnessed? A mid-air collision. These two aircraft hit each other. This was my heads-up display. I was the aircraft on your left at the beginning. We were 5,300 feet away from each other at this point. This is the farthest we got before that collision happened. We're 7 seconds from impact. At 3,000 feet, there is nothing either of us could have done to avoid the collision, physics. And I'm seeing it unfold in front of me. I go vertical, and I bring my nose back down as he's carving around too. And right here, I'm like, this feels uncomfortable. It feels like we're on a collision. Too late. He hits 20 feet behind my cockpit, a combined 500 miles an hour. Mass disorientation. Like getting hit by a semi-truck. I feel like I'm just in a dryer tumbling around. And I lose my vision right away, but not my consciousness. And so the first few seconds, I don't know what's going on. And then I get my vision back, but it's not a fluid memory. It's just snippets of a memory. And I remember looking up. I'm trying to get control of the aircraft with my stick, and I have no feeling. I'm trying to reach for the throttles, but I'm stuck up in my seat because the aircraft is actually tumbling through the sky. I don't know that at the time. So I'm trying to reach for the throttles because the aircraft is telling me it's on fire. It's saying engine overheat left, engine overheat right. And then I look up. We have 3 rear view mirrors in the F-15C, completely engulfed in flames. So I reach down and I pull those ejection handles. 20 G-forces throw me up. Mass chaos to eerie silence as I'm under parachute. My mind is not with it at all. I don't know if anything's real. I think I'm in a dream state. And I start saying out loud the checklist that I'm supposed to say after I eject. Canopy, visor, mask, seat, LPU, 4-line steer. And I'm saying it that fast, that out loud, and I'm not doing anything. I'm just saying it. Canopy, visor, mask, seat, LPU, 4-line steer. Canopy, visor, mask, seat, LPU. Okay, and now I start getting the wit about me, and I'm like, okay, I need to actually start doing part of this checklist. And I start going through the checklist, but I have to keep restarting the checklist. And I get down to seat kit. Canopy, visor, mask, seat kit. There's a seat kit. We sit on our seat that has a kit inside of it that has our life raft. It has our signaling devices, it has our radio, and I reach down and I detach my seat kit and drop all of it. Why did I do that? When you emergency ground egress from a fighter aircraft, you're on the ground, there's been a fire or something, you need to get out of the aircraft fast. You come to a stop and you get yourself out of the aircraft and you get to seat kit in that checklist and you detach your seat kit and you run away from the aircraft. Well, my mind wasn't with it. And when after I ejected, I am supposed to, when I get to seat kit, just make sure my seat kit is with me. And instead, I'm like, oh, seat kit, I know that one. Boop, boop. And I drop all my survival equipment. I have a life preserver unit around my neck. I hit the waters south of Panama City, Florida, 70 miles, 6-foot chop, 60 degrees, the 20th of February, 2008. And I have a life preserver unit around my neck, and that is it. And then I see my parachute. After I hit the water, parachute, goes away from you. And I see my parachute far away, and I see one lanyard from the parachute snaking through the water, and it sits about 6 inches from my hand. I'm like, I don't need a parachute. And then, like 10 seconds later, I'm like, what's it going to hurt to have my parachute? And so I reach out. At this point, I have to get over to it, and I grab it, and I pull it into me, and I wrap my hands around it, and I sit in the water for a couple hours where no one can find me. I see planes, but they're super far away. And then, after a couple hours, I see a boat. As I'm bobbing up and down in the water, I see a boat coming towards me. Next time I get up top, it's coming towards me. Next time I get up on top of the wave, it's turning away from me. Next time I get on top, it's turning away from me. It starts going away from me. This is like the end of the day. I'm really cold. I start shivering within 2 minutes of being in the water. You lose body temperature 25 times faster in water compared to air. And then I grab that parachute, which has multiple colors on it, one of them being orange, to get attention. There's other colors that conceal us, but that one gets attention. And I grab it, and I start trying to fill it with air. Just throw it over top of me and try to get the air to grab it. And that boat captain sees a little waving orange thing, turns back around, comes up beside me, and they're like, hey, man, you want to ride? Like, yes, please. And they pull me up, and I'm alive. I was saved. My wingman died. He died on impact. And he was the best of us. He's remarkable. I failed him. I failed his family. I failed my profession. How do you move on from that type of experience? How do we move on from the failures in our lives? Sometimes caused by other people, sometimes caused by ourselves. Resiliency is not an individual sport. I did not pick myself back up. I looked at the people that were around me, the community that I was developing, and tried to figure out how to live with these failures, because we all have them. What type of hope do we have? Lots of hope. There's lots of things we're being called to do. And one failure doesn't define us, nor does one success. Who are we becoming? This was my aircraft that they fished from the Gulf waters a few months after the accident. It was the people around me that allowed me to get back, get focused, and striving to become a better version of myself, to learn from my mistakes. And it's all about people. It's all about people. It's not about computers or AI taking over for us. It's about this type of connection, being present with one another. But we also have to remember people who are also becoming. It teaches us grace and understanding, empathy. Like, what kind of failures brought them to that moment that day? I don't know. But we all have them, right? So how do we interact with people? Important. And how do we have hope? I will tell you, as I sat in those Gulf waters thinking I was going to die, I could never imagine that I would become a test pilot a few years later. A test pilot that was responsible for developing and testing with a team automatic collision air avoidance technology. It's called ACAS, automatic air collision avoidance technology. It's when two planes are basically talking to each other, if you will, don't anthropomorphize it, but they recognize that a collision is going to happen. They take control away from the pilot at the last possible second, and they avoid the collision from happening. Automatic air collision avoidance technology. I was in test pilot school, and they just so happened to have this technology when I showed up that they needed someone to test, and I was the first person to go fly this mission. Not that mature mission. It took a while to get there, but the first step basically in developing it. I had no idea that that was going to be my future, nor did I realize or think that I was going to be a part of other autonomy technology. And we asked the question, can we trust technology? And we always are asking ourselves that question, as we should always be asking ourselves. From the dawn of technology, we've always asked that question, well, can I trust this microwave? Can I trust this radar? Can I trust this AI-enabled system? AI is not magic, it's math, it's software. Well, I'll tell you, the automatic air collision avoidance technology was actually a child of automatic ground collision avoidance technology. Automatic ground collision avoidance technology is when the plane knows it's going to hit the ground and saves the plane from hitting the ground, taking control away from the pilot. It was ready in around 2000 to be implemented in F-16 aircraft. It didn't get implemented till 2014. 14 years, 17 pilots lost their lives to avoidable collisions with the ground. Well, why? Arrogance from pilots, thinking they know best, sure. But what is that really based on? Trust. A lack of trust in the technology. An unwillingness also, because they were being closed-minded at times, to like what this future can hold. Because we don't want to be blind to the amazing opportunities that are in front of us, the amazing opportunities that technology will unlock. But we also don't want to be just over-trusting it. This technology, like I said, was a 14-year gap, was forced upon the military in 2014. And from that point on, it saved 13 pilots and 12 aircraft since then. And pilots won't even fly missions without it working. G-force is upper left, airspeed. G-force, the pilot's pulling 6 Gs now, 7 Gs, 8.3 Gs is what it gets to. They are unconscious. They have G-locked, G loss of consciousness. They're diving towards the ground, incapacitated, approaching 600 knots. Pilot's still unconscious, not with it, and the aircraft was saved. Automatic ground collision avoidance. Well, because I was a part of Auto ACAS, air collision avoidance, and I knew about Auto GCAS, ground collision avoidance, and then I became the F-35 commander of a 1,000-person team developing the F-35, I asked, well, when is Auto GCAS going in the F-35? And they told me, oh, about 7 years from now. I was like, what? Why? This was back in like 2019, 2018. I was like, we can do better than that. And because I had those experiences and my pathway weaved through this technology, I basically was able, with a team of a very few people, to accelerate the adoption of auto ground collision avoidance by the 7 years. We fielded it. We actually won the Collier Trophy, which is the biggest trophy in aerospace in America, because of the technology and because of how we accelerated into F-35, which was great. Our trophy's down in the Smithsonian. 6 months later, we saved our first pilot. Little did I know, as I'm thinking I'm going to die in those Gulf waters, that I was going to be a part of something much bigger than myself. Technology is accelerating so fast. I mean, this is a quarter. This is a computer chip. And these can coordinate with each other. They can have a camera on them. They can do things that are remarkable. Drone shows to drone warfare. Let's focus on the drone shows, right? But let's be ready for the drone warfare. We can't be blind to that. Here's a drone that can fly like 20 feet over trees without any GPS coordination, AI on the edge. They have a GPU like on the vehicle, fly over 200 miles an hour. It's great capability. How are we developing it? Well, we want to imbue the right virtues. AI debriefing tools. This is a fascinating but fantastic application of AI. You go do a mission, you land, and right away the computer tells the instructor and the pilot like all the things you did wrong and gives you tools to be more effective. It doesn't replace the pilot. It doesn't replace human agency. And that's what I think we need to be mindful of. When we have a system replacing human agency, we need to be very eyes wide open and understand the guardrails that are in place. So if you say, okay, great, we want to make sure that no robot, no AI is going to be responsible for nuclear launch decision making, right? So a human is going to always be responsible for pressing that big red launch button. That's wonderful, except what if that human's getting all their information from an AI system that's synthesizing all the data? This is very important for us to discuss the applications and the implications of artificial intelligence. Drones, uncrewed systems, we tested them, we developed them, they're here. I mean, they're not on the battlefield yet, they're coming. Who's in charge of those? Well, the pilots are, because we don't want to give authority for this system to necessarily go do a mission without having a human responsible for it. But is everyone going to apply AI in that way? I doubt it. And this is just an AI-generated video because I could. But these pilots controlling those drones with, maybe it's an iPad, and then it shot something, I don't know, I forget what I asked the system to do, but shot a missile, but it doesn't look like a missile. But the point is, we have to interact with these, so we need technology that's going to be robust and reliable and governable, so we have an ability to say yes or no and have a vote in it and not hand over our human agency. At the same time, we don't want to, because of the way I talked about agency earlier, we don't want to lose our ability to make decisions. Right? We don't want to become less clear, lose our judgment, less discerning because of technology, but that is the precipice we're on right now. Really the knife's edge. When do you give your kid a calculator? I got 4 kids. My wife's amazing, she homeschools them all, but I'm not going to give my kid a calculator when they're 6 years old. When do you give a kid a large language model? Conversations for us to discuss. And how is technology going to help optimize human performance? I love this analogy. It's a centaur analogy. Are you guys familiar with this at all? The idea is, chess is the best example. You have basically Garry Kasparov was beat by Deep Blue in the 90s. So humans, like AI, it wasn't really AI at that moment, but computers, and then quickly thereafter AI, was better than humans at chess. But for about 15 years after that moment, if a human was working alongside AI, it could still beat an AI system. But that, over that time, went away. So they were in this centaur phase, where they were able to marry up the technology with the people. And I think we're all kind of in a centaur phase in different aspects of this technology in our society. And we need to be mindful of what this is going to look like, and when do we retain control, even though something is technically possible, should we allow it to happen? And I'll tell you, I'm on a US delegation that's in dialogue with China on the ethics of AI and autonomy. And China's concerned about the same stuff, y'all. This isn't just an American thing, this is a human race thing. And I don't want to romanticize how good AI is, but I also don't want to demonize it. One more story. Who are we becoming? This gentleman was one of the first pilots in the military. 1917, his name was Charles de Shields. He was flying the Jenny aircraft when someone that was flying in the same orbit as him accidentally took out his tail. The aircraft plummets to the ground from 500 feet, 10,000 pieces, and he walks away from the aircraft. That man flew B-17s, and he ended up being the commander, the base commander of Hickam Army Airfield in 1941. And he handed over the guidon, which means he left command 7 days before Pearl Harbor. He went back to his house, a house that still has bullet holes in it today, picked up his daughter and wife, and flew back to the States. And you could say the States then because it wasn't a state yet. And thank goodness he did. That was my grandmother from my father's side. So he was my great-grandfather. Who are we becoming? What's your legacy? Betty Robinson. What a wonderful story. That's my grandmother from my mom's side. I will say, I don't know if I want my kids in aviation. Accident. Kidding aside. The legacy. What are we leaving behind? That's important for us to think about in this crazy, tumultuous time as we're adopting AI. The legacy we leave, I think we recognize is really important. But there's good and there's bad. We all come from a lineage of awesome things, but also horrible things. And we want to try to avoid the horribleness as much as possible and imbue in our progeny and in our communities the good. And I recognize that it's not all good for everyone. I will tell you, growing up, I was 6 years old, and my mom left our family. She was overwhelmed. She thought she was failing as a parent, and it was crushing her, and she didn't want to fail us, so she left us, which doesn't make sense necessarily, but that's where her mind was at. And she left our family, and then she was in her 40s, 42, and she was dating a guy in her, he was 25 or so. And they end up having a kid. She gets pregnant. And the guy's like, well, I'm not any part of this. No, I'm not going to support you at all. And I remember we lived in Connecticut. My dad was a VP of a restaurant chain in Connecticut. And I went to this guy's house, and I remember my dad laying this guy out on the lawn. And my mom and my dad were like, hey, let's start over. Let's figure this out together. And so within a couple weeks, they up and move out to Colorado. We were in Connecticut at the time. And my dad moves back in with my mom, and they start kind of dating each other again. And then a year later, they actually get remarried. But my dad left that job and became a garbage man in Colorado. He was overeducated, and then he became a fence pole digger. How are we living out our greatness? Our greatness is not necessarily these things, right? It's who we're becoming, the virtues, the values, the character that we demonstrate. And he taught me a lot about priorities. Family, that trumped his work. Oftentimes we talk about balance, but if we really care about balance, maybe we should be asking the people in our world that matters most if we're balanced. They're the ones should be giving us a report card, not our boss per se. But my father also was addicted to gambling and struggled with those type of things. That's why I've actually never touched alcohol in my life, because of the addiction that kind of ran through our family. And a few years later, he passed away from cancer. What legacy do you think he left? What legacy are we all leaving? How are we leading through these uncertain times? Purpose, preparation, discipline, balance, community. They will provide clarity and discernment in uncertain times. Regardless of the momentary outcome, you will grow and be prepared for the next challenge. I'm sure of it. That's unlocking your 100%. It's about how it all comes together, how we are holistically approaching technology and each other in order to get us to where we need to in the future. This is me firing a missile off the F-35. This was the last test of a weapon before the plane was good to go back in 2018. Alaska, beautiful to fly over. And so I'm here. I'm present with you all. I'm thankful for your time. And I challenge you to think about what your greatness looks like, what your purpose looks like, even at this stage, whatever stage you're at. And how do we rise together in order to tackle the challenges that we are facing as a society, as a race? Thanks for your time.